Aloha everyone, my name is Shannon Cristobal and I'm the Director of the Hawaii History Day and K-12 programming at Hawaii Council of Humanities. On behalf of Hawaii Council of Humanities, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out this afternoon to be with us for our last Community Speaker Series panel today. This Community Speaker Series was put together to bring together the different sources of knowledge, voices, and wealth that honor the diversity of our people. We just gathered a few of these leaders together to introduce their digital archives, tours, primary sources, and other resources for you to access and utilize. So today we have three amazing organizations with us. First, we have University of Hawaii at Manoa Library Congressional Papers Collection, Don Suioka. We have Kona Historical Society, Audrey Blair, and Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, Healoha Johnston with us. First off, we will start with Don Suioka from University of Hawaii at Manoa Library, Hawaii Congressional Papers Collection. Don is a Congressional Papers archivist. Don, thank you so much for being with us today. I will now turn over the floor to you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you to Shannon and the rest of the Hawaii History Day team for inviting me here. And thanks to all of you folks for sharing part of your afternoon with me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I'm really excited to share with you a little bit this afternoon about the Hawaii Congressional Papers Collection. As you may know, Hawaii has been sending delegates to the United States Congress since 1900. And what our collection does is to collect the papers of Hawaii's post-statehood or post-1959 delegates to Congress. And when I say we collect the papers of our US senators and representatives, what I really mean is we collect their archives. In other words, all of the documentation in paper, but also electronic form that they and their staff generate over the course of carrying out their responsibilities as our representatives in Congress. So some of the major types of records that you'll find in our collections include correspondence. For example, correspondence from Senator Inoue's aides discussing strategy for stopping the bombing of Koho'olawe, or letters from Senator Matsunaga to other senators asking them to support redress for Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. You'll find legislation in all of its various forms, from going from, an idea to an outline, to a draft, to a bill, to a law. You'll find speeches and drafts of speeches, and there's an example here on the slide. You'll find a lot of constituent correspondence. So that's, letters from people from all walks of life writing their senators and representatives about issues like the Vietnam War, or issues like nuclear energy, or like sovereignty, or people just asking about, federal government programs like Social Security and Medicaid. You'll find campaign materials. For example, lists of every place campaign banners were displayed during the 1962 election. I find this very interesting, is public opinion polling questions and results. Or you'll find, for example, scripts for radio and TV ads. Our collections contain a lot of photographs. And for many of the members, they contain information about their lives before, and in some cases, after they served in Congress. So some of the collections that are currently open for research include the papers of Spark Matsunaga, the papers of Pat Saiki, the papers of Hiram Fong, the papers of Tom Gill, and the papers of Daniel Inouye. We do have a small collection of memorabilia from Representative Patsy Mink, but the bulk of Patsy Mink's papers are held by the Library of Congress. We're fortunate that Representative Ed Case has deposited his papers in our collection. We're currently processing the papers of Representative Neil Abercrombie. And then when we're finished with that, we will be moving on to processing the papers of Senator Daniel Akaka. And per the senator's wishes, those papers will be open for research in 2028. All right, so at this point, you may be wondering, okay, that sounds interesting and maybe kind of complicated, but how do I know if these collections contain material that relates to my particular research topic? So first of all, if you're doing any kind of like biographical research about the members of Congress, please definitely get in touch. Because like I mentioned, we have material that extensive documentation of their work in Congress, but we also have material from before they were in Congress and in some cases after they were in Congress. In terms of subject matter, generally the subjects and issues that the collections document the best are going to be the subjects and issues that are most important to the members and also that are most important to Hawaii. So for us, that would be, you know, agricultural and maritime issues, you know, like sugar, like shipping, like fisheries. It would be transportation, like highways and air travel, the armed services, legislation relating to Native Hawaiian communities, and civil rights issues, including redress for Japanese Americans interned during World War II. So as you can imagine, you know, given the amount of time that some of our members have served in Congress, for example, Senator Inouye served for over around 50 years, they generate a ton of material. So altogether, these collections make up about 3,000 boxes of primary source materials documenting Hawaii's 20th and 21st century political history, insofar as it relates to the federal government. So 3,000 is sort of a abstract term. So if you were to like line up all those boxes, that'd be 3/4 of a mile of boxes. So given that quantity of material, doing research in the collections can be pretty time consuming. So to that end, what I'd like to do now is share a couple of resources where I've tried to kind of like distill or curate small parts of the collection and present them in more manageable chunks. Okay. All right, so can you all see this? This is our website. Yeah, okay, looks like it. So this is our main website. This is where you'll find all of the information about our collection. If you're already used to doing research and archives, there are links to our finding aids from this page. And excuse me, all of the resources that I am going to share with you. Okay, so this is our website for our collection. And the resources that I'm going to share are all linked from here. So the first one I'm going to share is this one over here, Hawaii History Day Primary Sources from the Hawaii Congressional Papers Collection. And I'm going to just click on this tab over here that says 2020 Communication and History. And my intention with this guide is to every year add more resources from our collection that relate to that particular year's History Day theme. So for this year, I focused on political speeches, which are, I think, some of the most, one of the most memorable and impactful forms of political communication. So what I've done here is just try to gather a selection of speeches from our collection, speeches that represent a range of issues. For example, local issues, national issues, international issues, as well as a range of different time periods. And so they're just presented here with a little bit of background text. And I was super excited to find some drafts, in some cases multiple drafts of some of those speeches. So whenever I found a draft, I presented it here as well. And the kind of idea behind this guide is not so much to show you, you know, exact representation of all the speeches we have in our collection. It's more to just get folks started thinking about this particular form of political communication. You know, thinking about how a politician might communicate differently to one audience versus another audience, or what techniques might be used if someone were trying to, you know, use a speech to convince someone to change their mind about something, versus what techniques would they use to, you know, commemorate an event for posterity. And then the second resource that I want to share is this one here, images from the Hawaiʻi Congressional Papers collection, which is pretty self-explanatory. It's a small collection of some of our kind of greatest hits images. And again, here I try to select a range of images showing some of the national and international events that our members of Congress took part in, such as the, you know, the Watergate hearings, the Iran-Contra affair hearings. And I also wanted to showcase a little bit of Hawaii's political history. So you'll see a lot of familiar faces in this collection. For example, this is a very young Mufi Hanneman with Senator Spark Matsunaga in 1980. And I wanted to end with photos because I think that for History Day, photos are the thing that I can help you with the most. So like photos for websites or photos for documentaries or performances. The way that research usually works in our collections is that people will physically come to the library, they'll go up to the 5th floor to our reading room, and then I'll bring them like all these boxes of materials and they'll sit there all day going through the boxes. But right now we're closed because of the pandemic. But I am going in 1 day a week. And while I can't scan 5 boxes of letters for you or something like that, I can scan photos. So if you are looking for any kind of imagery relating to our members of Congress or events that you know they took part in, do get in touch. And if you have any general questions about our collections or what they might contain, if you think there's even a remote possibility that we might have some materials that relate to your particular topic, just reach out to me. On this page, there is a link to an email. And then on the page with all the speeches, there's a link to my email. So don't hesitate to reach out with any questions that you have, and I'll be really, really happy to help you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing that your resources with us. That's awesome.